This is where it gets scary.
Any questions from the audience?
How long were both of you working on your books?
You go first.
Well, my daughter asked me the question, why can't girls play baseball? And she was 8 years old. I put this book out last year, and she was 30. Honest answer. The first book was single-spaced, 800 pages long. And then it took place over 3 years, and then it became, I went to Rice Knowles writing colloquium, and oh my goodness. You sound like you've had quite a bit of schooling as well, so
Yeah.
I'm very impressed by that. But so it got down to 5 days at Wrigley Field. And then I got it down to 4 days at Wrigley Field when I took classes at another school after my professor at Rice passed away. And then it got down to 3 days at Wrigley Field, and I thought, you know, I better stop now or I'm going to have a short story. That was.
So I don't write like normal people, I don't think. Mine always start out really short and then I have to add things. And this was something I experienced when I took screenwriting classes at UT, where we'd go in there and our professors would say, okay, everyone has to cut like the first page out of their scene and the last page out of their scene. And the professor would look at me and say, except for you, Amber, here's your own, okay? So I always started out really short. But in terms of thinking about this, it was not a short process. I started thinking about it when some of my former students who are here were very young teenagers. And I guess about 8.5 years before I actually started writing it, I was thinking about like, what are the witches doing when they're off stage in Macbeth? They do some really cool things and they talk about it. And it's something that doesn't involve the plot at all of Macbeth. But it was something I thought about. And then I taught Hamlet quite a bit when I started teaching college. And I always loved the part where Hamlet's kidnapped by pirates. And there's a part in the introduction where I mention one of my colleagues who didn't understand that there were pirates in Hamlet. And I thought, how can you not think about that? That's amazing. And so I just spent these 8.5 years thinking about those things before I actually started writing the book. And the creation of my main characters, I guess, was the inciting incident for me to say, okay, let's write this down. And after I started writing it down, it was about a 1.5 year process in which I told pretty much no one what I was doing. I kept it secret. Over that 1.5 years, I think I spent about 90 days physically writing it. But those were spread out throughout the 1.5 years, and then in between I was writing in my head, writing it down.
I'm so jealous.
It's totally different. That was a really good example of how different you can be.
So, Katie, so I know that you write mysteries too. So did you write the mystery, so I'm assuming you were writing both of them at the same time.
Well, like I said, you know, it was in stages. So in between each stage, I've actually got 5 that are written. One is out now, Preacher's First Murder, and then Murder in the Second Pew is coming out in October. I'm sure nothing with the frustrating business of writing a book over that long of time had nothing to do with the fact that I started killing people in my books.
You were writing the mysteries and you were writing Wrigley Field at the same time.
Yeah, and Hearts Gravel Homecoming and some of the other ones that are about to come out as well.
It's hard to juggle like that.
To me, it's refreshing.
Really?
Because then, because I can sometimes not see the forest through the trees, and I can't see where I'm screwing it up or where it needs to go. So I go over here and write on that, and then I come back to another project. I'm like, oh, that character can't do that. That's totally out of character for that character. So,
Good. Good. Question?
Yes. Okay. Okay, we're supposed to ask why you wanted to write books.
Okay. Do you want to go first or do you want me to?
please.
Okay. I don't have a good answer for that. I guess to kind of share the worlds that are inside my head with other people. That sounds completely crazy, but when you're a world builder and kind of think along that vein, you kind of want other people to join you in your madness and to not just be the only one who lives there. So I guess I wrote it down so other people would know what I was talking about, and I wasn't. It's more sane to write it down than to just keep it in your brain, I suppose.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Chicago. The Chicago Cubs are in my veins. It's about the only thing my dad and I ever agreed on. And we were big sports people. And heck, why can't I dream about being a baseball? I was a catcher because I was the shortest one. I was closest to the ground. But, yeah, not a pitcher. Oh, I couldn't pitch ever. But anyway, it's a dream. And sometimes just writing down a dream is fun.
Did you have?
Yeah, how did you come about selecting or writing to find a publisher, your query letters, or did you self-publish? Or do you?
Well, I submitted a lot of places, but I ended up going with Silkhaven Publishing, which is a very local place, and very nice people. And by the way, Silkhaven, I'm very grateful for all the support you've given me. But it was a long process. And I don't know what you found, but the business side of this is not fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd much rather be at a typewriter creating than trying to push something. It's really hard work. So there's a lot to be learned before you can actually get someone to look at it, I think.
Yeah, I kind of self-published. I got editing help and some other kind of business technical help from Verdopolis Press, and then I have a lot of readers who are here who helped me with the editing process too. I took I don't know if it was a quiz, but I read over an online questionnaire that said, should you self-publish or should you go with a publisher? And the very first question, which is so perfect, was, are you a patient person? It takes a lot of patience and self-esteem to try to go through the rejection process. I was thinking kind of always through my writing career about like, well, what do you need to publish? What do you need emotionally in order to succeed? And I was thinking of like Virginia Woolf saying, well, you need steady income, you need a quiet place, but you also need a cheerleader. Because if you don't have the self-esteem to kind of push yourself forward, you're not going to be successful. You need people who are pushing you and who believe in you.
I had a question for Amber.
Yeah.
So with all the hundreds and hundreds of characters, 100,000 of characters in Shakespeare, how did you end up picking the ones you picked? And did you find yourself like ruling some out that you started out thinking you were going to add?
That's a really good question. If anything, I've added more than I anticipated, but I looked through his plays for things that were magical. So the ghost from Macbeth, the ghost from Hamlet, the witches from Macbeth, pretty much everything in The Tempest with Ariel. And then for the sequel for this, which is called Double Double Toil, I'm bringing in the fairies from Midsummer Night's Dream. So that should be fun. But I was looking for these magical elements because I liked the fantasy of it, and Shakespeare couldn't stage those things very well. There just wasn't the technology. If he had been alive today, he would have been writing screenplays, without a doubt. I went for novels because it's a little bit cheaper to produce than something for Hollywood. But I was constantly thinking, like, well, if he knew about modern technology, how would Ariel actually work, and those sorts of things. I also chose characters that I feel really strongly about. I really love Hamlet. He's like my favorite character ever. He killed me a little bit to write. I didn't, with all the Shakespeare characters, I didn't put lines in their mouths that Shakespeare actually wrote. It's all original lines from me. And to try to get into Hamlet's mindset was a little bit tricky. So he did drain my soul. I also wrote about characters who I really hate. I hate Prospero quite a bit in the play. And he just mansplains everything, and he's so condescending. And so I kind of wanted to make him better. and more modern, perhaps appealing to our modern sensibilities a little bit more in my book. But I find myself too, as I'm moving forward into the next book and then the next one after that too, because it is the first of a trilogy, thinking about characters that I can save. And not necessarily save from death, but redeem. And so I've been thinking about Ophelia quite a bit, and she's going to be in the next one. I feel really strongly she didn't have a voice in the play Hamlet, and I really want to give her a voice, so she'll be in there.
That was really fascinating.
When is Double Double coming out? Do you know?
Well, if I could quit my day job,
Yeah.
it would be out very soon. But with how things are going, it's looking like next summer sometime. We'll say before next Halloween. But if anyone is like dying to ask me if someone dies, you can ask me. I might not tell you the truth, but I'll be hanging around afterwards to answer those individual questions.
I have a question for you. Okay, so I saw in the back, I was reading your
Yeah.
stuff. You have 3 books planned, the trilogy.
Yes.
Do you know already what's going to happen?
Yes, and the way I like to describe it is like with old-fashioned Disney animation, they would draw like every 5th frame, and then they'd have someone else kind of go in and draw in between. So I have kind of the 5th frame planning done, so I know the big picture. All of the in-between stuff is what I'm still kind of figuring out, and I do write a lot of scenes and then cut them later or change them. And so the kind of fine details, but general plot-wise, I was doing that as I was writing this, so I wouldn't have any inconsistencies.
Good.
Yeah, thanks.
Have the girls had any influence on your writing, or did you keep it secret from them?
That's a good question. So I teach at college, like I said, and I was kind of fishing with some of my students even then, like not my biological children, but I'd occasionally ask things like, you know, so what did you think about this part in Hamlet that we're reading right now, and kind of get feedback from them that I'd use. In terms of actually basing the characters on like my daughters, I tried to make Alda very appealing to all young girls. We're a little bit tough. I like to think that if either of my daughters ever ended up in some magical world like Wonderland or Neverland or Narnia, that they would do some of the same things that Alda does, and they'd react in the same way. So I was thinking, okay, if they ever met a witch, would they freak out, or would they try to like participate in the discourse with her? So I was thinking about that. And then the name Alda also comes from my daughters. It's the first 2 letters of my oldest daughter's name and the last 2 letters of my youngest daughter's name. So that's probably the biggest influence.
Okay, yes.
Just ask.
Okay. Is everything, are all 3 is the whole trilogy going to be set in Grand Ledge?
So we're in Texas right now, and I'm from Michigan originally. This takes place in the city where I grew up, Grand Ledge, but it takes place in the 19th century when that city doesn't exist anymore, that version of the city. In the mythology of my book, and in some of the Native American mythology that exists in the Grand Ledge area too, there's a lot of magic, and that magic does come into play in quite a bit in the future books. And it draws on some real life events as well that actually happen in Grand Ledge. So if you ever go on the Grand Ledge Historical Society website, maybe you can kind of guess some things that'll happen in my book.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. We have copies of their books on the back table. I'm sure they'd be happy to sign them for you and answer any further questions you might have. Please enjoy snacks and